Back in 2015, I posted what was, in hindsight, an uncharacteristically negative review of Jurassic World, and I've been meaning to amend something I said in it ever since. My line 1 item complaint, the very first thing that I took issue with, was the so-called crappy CGI, and to illustrate my point, I used this shot. Which, yeah, I mean, this isn't a great shot. In fact, my opinion of this shot hasn't changed one bit since I first uploaded the video. But what's worth noting here is that this is probably the only bad CGI shot in the entire film. Every other digital dinosaur in this film is somewhere between good and gorgeous. But I didn't mention any of those shots, just this one bad one. And what's more, I don't think it's the actual CGI that makes this shot bad. This head-on perspective is probably the most unflattering angle for a theropod ever devised. Raptors have an arresting profile. Filming them head-on with a long lens like this foreshortens their bodies in a way that makes them look flat and indistinct. The tight framing screws up our sense of speed and scale. How fast are they moving? How close are they to the camera? It's hard to say. They're also lit in broad, even daylight with no distinct shadows. You can barely tell where one raptor ends and the other begins. And maybe it's supposed to make them look like one cohesive unit, but from a purely visual standpoint, it's kind of a mess. But here's the real kicker. Absolutely none of that is the effects team's fault. The focal depth, the lighting, the viewing angle, the framing. I know there was a lot of previs on set, so it's not like ILM had no input on all that stuff, but the animators, all they could do was render out the most lifelike and distinct character models that their computing power and production schedules would allow. And they did a pretty good job at those tasks. But then one reactionary schlub with no animation experience can go and post a whole video about how these 7 seconds of not great footage means the whole effects team can kick rocks. Utterly ridiculous. I guess what I'm trying to say is, even bad films deserve good criticism. I'd like to start with a simple premise. Nobody sets out to make a bad film. They might have low expectations for themselves, or even deceptive marketing, but I don't think any filmmaker actually wants the viewer to have a bad time. I like watching films in good faith, meeting filmmakers halfway, judging films for what they are, and even if they're still just bad, there's still one massive saving grace. I think you can often learn more about good filmmaking by watching a bad movie than you can from watching a good one. Which brings me to dinosaurs. Or more specifically, dinosaur films. Dinosaur films are practically a genre unto themselves, in that most of them fall somewhere on the action, sci-fi, fantasy spectrum. Very few dinosaur romantic comedies, almost no dinosaur westerns, and basically no dinosaur biopics. This makes the fandom very dedicated, but also relatively small. Insular, you might say. Dinosaurs aren't a huge selling point for general audiences. Not a lot of people go see a movie just because it's got dinosaurs in it. I mean, I will. But that doesn't mean I'm gonna like it. Putting dinosaurs in your film is enough to get my ass in the seat, sure, but you still gotta do the work of any good film if you want me to actually go and recommend it. Get me to care about the characters, raise the stakes, give me some catharsis. Which I feel like it makes me something of a rare bird in this fandom because I've seen about as many dinosaur films as any fan of the genre, and yet I feel like most of them are kinda bad. It's nobody's fault. Most films of any kind are not that great. But dinosaurs are such a charismatic ingredient to any story that I think a lot of people think they can just throw some dinosaurs into their film and then they'll do all the dramatic heavy lifting for them. But lest we forget, it takes a lot of hard work just to make a crappy film, much less a good one. And even if we do just want to come up with a list of everything that we think a certain film did wrong, there's still a way to do it without shitting on anybody.
That is one big pile of shit.
Constructive criticism gives actionable advice, something the filmmakers can use to actually make better films. Maybe come up with a reason for the Indominus Rex to escape, instead of a mere method. That way, her breakout won't feel so forced and contrived. You can even be snarky with your feedback. I'm sorry, am I supposed to care about anyone's death in this movie? And hey look, I'm not your dad. You can critique films however you want, but if all you're gonna do is sit there and say things like the script sucked, the acting bites, or even the director has no style, you run the risk of sounding like you wouldn't know how to do it any better, and we wouldn't want that now, would we?
You are so bad at picking video topics.
I know.
The people who don't have any interest in dinosaur films won't want to watch a whole video about them. And the people who do like dinosaur films won't want to listen to you bash them for an hour.
Well, see, I'm not gonna bash them.
The title of this video is Bad Dinosaur Films.
Well, it's a video about constructive criticism.
Who is this for?
What do you mean? My audience.
Is this for the people who like dinosaur films? Or for the people who don't?
Well, both. Hopefully. You know, most of my videos are actually about like 2 different subjects, or they're trying to capture 2 different audiences like that.
And I bet you think that means everyone will like it.
Well, no, not everyone. Of course not. I mean, the only person that I can really ever make videos for is myself.
And I suppose that's why you agonize over every last detail, because you don't know how you'll react.
I'm sorry, can you let me work?
Who's stopping you?
It's like Thomas Edison said when asked why he'd tried and failed over 10,000 times to write, direct, and produce the perfect dinosaur film. He said, I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways how not to write, direct, and produce the perfect dinosaur film.
Oh, that is good. That just bought you a 30-second grace period.
Dinosaur films have been around since basically the invention of cinema, and developed swiftly throughout the 1920s and 30s, but the real heyday kicked off in the 1950s, when dozens of dinosaur films, and dinosaur-adjacent films, like Godzilla, The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, Journey to the Center of the Earth, The Giant Behemoth, 20 Million Miles to Earth, and The Land Unknown, all flooded cinemas. I know The Land Unknown gets a lot of flack for sinking like half its budget into this goofy-looking T-Rex costume, but I actually think the special effects suit the film just fine, and I think it's got more than enough going on thematically to make up for any of the production limitations. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The Land Unknown is practically begging for a remake. King Dinosaur, by contrast, barely even qualifies as a dinosaur film. The story begins when a new planet suddenly enters the solar system, Planet Nova, and a crew of 4 astronauts travels to the planet to see what it's all about. For the first half of this 64-minute film, they basically just wander around Griffith Park and take in the local wildlife.
Look at that tree. Isn't he cute?
A lot of speciesism, though. Their reactions basically boil down to mammals good, reptiles bad. It's not until 29 minutes in before they finally meet their first real monster, which takes the form of a giant mole cricket. As you can probably tell, King Dinosaur didn't plunk down any big bucks on stop-motion animation or dinosaur maquettes. Every single monster in this film is just a living creature stomping around a miniature set. Sometimes not even a miniature set. The eponymous King Dinosaur turns out to be one especially territorial iguana that they meet in the last 20 minutes.
It resembles the Tyrannosaurus Rex of Earth's prehistoric age.
No, it does not. It holes 2 of them up in a cave for about a day and a half before another lizard shows up and distracts it long enough for them to escape. But not before they go ahead and detonate an atom bomb to make sure they aren't followed. And then they just get in their spaceship and leave.
Come on. Let's go home.
Are you kidding me? What was the point of nuking the planet? Don't they have any notion of how pointlessly cruel that is? Oh wait, they do?
Well, we've done it. Brought civilization to planet Nova.
Is he being sarcastic here? I can't quite tell. If he's being sarcastic, then I think this is actually a pretty interesting idea. The notion that exploration itself is often an act of violence. Hey, thanks, Amazon. But then herein lies the lesson for filmmakers. If you're gonna imbue a theme into your film, imbue a theme into your film. Not just one scene, not just one line, because I don't think this single moment is enough to make up for all the other deficiencies of the film.
My guns jammed.
The 1960s were perhaps the golden age of stop-motion animation, and stop-motion dinosaurs in particular. My favorite is probably Valley of Gwangi from 1969, which tells basically the exact same story as King Kong, except instead of discovering a giant ape in the South Pacific, it's an Allosaurus in the Mexican desert. 1,000,000 years BC is probably the poster child for 1960s dinosaur films, the one that almost every dinosaur film fan cites as the best of the best from this decade. But to be honest, I never really understood the appeal. The effects are spectaculastic, to be sure, but if you take out all the dinosaur sequences, it really doesn't affect the plot that much. It's an effects reel, not much else. And some people are into that, which is perfectly fine. But what's wild to me is that a few years later, the exact same studio tried it again, but with even fewer winning ingredients. Filmed in the late 60s, but not released until 1970, When Dinosaurs Rule the Earth has some semblance of a story. A prehistoric cave woman narrowly survives being sacrificed by her superstitious tribe, and then makes her way to the far less wound-up seaside people, where she takes an instant hankering to one of their boys. But when her old tribe comes looking for her, keen on completing the ritual sacrifice, she's gotta evade capture in the wild, while her boyfriend runs interference as best he can. And you know what? I'm not even mad that a film called When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth only has one dinosaur in it. A lone Chasmosaurus with about a minute of screen time. The plesiosaur, the boa constrictor, whatever this thing is, the pterosaur, and the giant crabs don't count. But I swear that's not what I take issue with. For me, it's more about how, again, if you take out all the monster sequences, it really doesn't affect the plot that much. Wait, maybe I'm missing some context. Let me put on subtitles real quick. Now I know what you're thinking. But Surge, the monster sequences are the plot. And you're right, this is basically just a random set of prehistoric misadventures up until the point when a natural disaster wipes out all the story's antagonists. But there's a way to structure these little episodes in such a way that one leads into the next, where each one builds on what came before. Each individual sequence manages to ratchet up the tension within that individual scene. Like the plesiosaur attack in particular, I think is pretty great. But the tension rarely ever transfers from one scene to the next. I counted one instance of planting and payoff when the cave woman tames this megalosaurus thing and then it rides in to rescue her a couple of scenes later. I know a lot of this might sound like hypercritical, nitpicky nonsense, and it's not like I think this is a terrible film. You could definitely do worse, even within the 1960s. But to me, it's almost like watching a mediocre film, a film that's just okay, is sometimes even more frustrating than watching a terrible one, if that makes sense. The talent was there. The cheese and beefcake were at their cheese and beefcakiest. If only they'd spent just a little more time on the script. Some say he's still wandering the woods. If for nothing else, this film feels so much longer than its 100-minute runtime, and I think that's a problem that could stand to be addressed.
Do you know what else feels so much longer than its 100-minute runtime?
Don't.
The movie you made.
I knew you were going to say that.
Nobody wants to watch a 100-minute, no-budget indie film.
Well, the plan was to eventually get it down to 85 or 90 minutes.
But you didn't, did ya?
No. I actually cut a lot of material. I cut about 15 minutes worth of dialogue. I couldn't start cutting individual scenes, though, because each one of them...
Aren't you worried someone's going to watch your film and decide that you're a terrible filmmaker?
Well, someone might watch that film and decide I'm a great filmmaker.
Is that what you thought when you watched it?
I know what you're doing.
I'm not trying to keep it a secret.
You think if my film has similar problems to the ones that I'm talking about, then I don't have any right to critique them.
You've got every right to critique. I'm just wondering if that's all you can do.
Even the most devoted dinosaur film fans will usually tell you a movie like Planet of Dinosaurs is pure tripe. Maybe they'll tell you it's so bad it's good, or a great guilty pleasure, but nobody's recommending it completely unironically.
Let's get out of here.
Just look at that dated film stock, the pitiful day for night effects, the cheap costumes, the cheesy acting,
I'll get it.
the dialogue.
There isn't any filling station down the road. There isn't any telephones. If there were, long distance rates would be something else.
And the plot? What plot? You mean the one where the ship crash lands on some distant planet which just so happens to have dinosaurs on it, and then the surviving crew members just start walking, and then every now and then they get attacked, and sometimes somebody dies, and sometimes somebody doesn't, and then eventually they just build some huts and then the movie ends? That plot? Looks like they spent some decent coin on the effects, but clearly not as much as many of their predecessors. And so the movie, as a whole, is utter crap, right?
Do you miss him?
Yes. No. I'm not sure.
To which I say,
You're missing the point.
anybody can tell you what Planet of Dinosaurs got wrong. I want to know what it got right. Well, for what it's worth, the special effects did win an award, the 1980 Saturn Award for Best Film Produced Under $1 Million. But I want to dig deeper. I knew this film by reputation before I saw it, so I went in expecting it to be a real bore, but I was honestly pretty shocked at just how watchable it is. Like, maybe it wasn't super compelling, watching these people move from clearing to clearing just to find something new to gripe about for a few minutes before finally moving on, but it wasn't super boring either. The characters first set out from their crash ship without much of a purpose in mind, but the fact that they keep advancing from one location to the next, and therefore one problem to the next, is the foundation of any good script. Lesson learned: if the plot feels stale, keep things moving. There's also this really great recurring bit where the boss of the company keeps trying to tell everyone what to do, and at first everyone sort of just patiently explains to him that he doesn't have the skills necessary to assist in an actual crisis, and that he might as well shut up, but he won't listen. And eventually it all comes to a head when he threatens to give his secretary a bad performance review, and so she writes "I quit" on a rock and turns it in as a letter of resignation.
I quit. Sorry about the 2 weeks notice. Take it out of my vacation pay.
So I love that.
Oh,
If I remade this film, it'd be all about how bosses don't know how to do the work of their underlings, and that the ability to boss people around is not an actual skill. Oh, and you know that ending, where they stop moving and just build themselves a home? I kinda really like that too. It's like a feature-length adaptation of that old Mitch Hedberg bit.
If you find yourself lost in the woods, fuck it, build a house. Well, I was lost, but now I live here. I've severely improved my predicament.
I still don't think the movie's very good, but I'm not sorry I saw it. Skipping ahead to the 1990s, we come to one of the more infamous entries of the whole decade.
He might be okay. Well, no, probably not now.
Carnosaur tells the story of an omnicidal scientist. Do you like that word? Omnicidal? I learned it earlier this year and I can't get enough of it. It means someone who wants the whole world to die. An omnicidal scientist who figures out how to clone dinosaurs using chicken DNA. And then in what can only be described as a narrative lateral, she unleashes a deadly virus that makes people spontaneously gestate bloodthirsty baby dinosaurs that pop out of their wombs like chestbusters. Which is actually such a bonkers mid-film plot pivot that I find it hard not to respect. Carnosaur is forever destined to be compared to Jurassic Park, and that's largely by design. Released just 4 weeks before Jurassic Park in the summer of 1993, producer Roger Corman always intended for this project to piggyback off of Jurassic Park's massive multi-million-dollar marketing campaign. I don't think he ever wanted anyone to literally mistake one film for the other. I think he just wanted to take advantage of the sudden public interest in dinosaurs that he would be the first to admit he did nothing to help create. The script features more than a few cheeky references to its big-budget cousin.
That's really fabulous. Like a great theme park.
And they even went so far as to hire Laura Dern's mother, Diane Ladd, to play the lead villain. So it's clear they want you to at least recall Jurassic Park when you watch this movie. Although if you ask me, it feels a lot more like Tremors, well, with the monsters running amok in a secluded desert town plot. Carnosaur isn't all bad. In fact, I don't even think it's all that bad. It's one of the few hard R dinosaur horrors ever even attempted, and I think it does a pretty good job of not taking itself too seriously, while still expecting to have to show me something horrifying in order to horrify me. Even the hokiest violence in this film is still rendered violently, and I can appreciate the respect it has for its own material. Carnosaur was made with only 1 1/3% of the budget of Jurassic Park. Hell, it was made for less than 1/10 of what Tremors cost to make, and it was shot in only 1/3 of the time. Carnosaur was never going to be capital G great, but it's interesting to see what still works even with a budget this small. For one thing, the acting ain't half bad. I don't think so anyway. These actors have not been given much to work with, and yet some of them are really fun to watch chew the scenery.
Don't.
Where do these come from?
I made them.
You made them? Would you lay them yourself?
There's also a really fun escalation of stakes across each act. First, there's the escaped raptor that's eating everyone in sight, then there's the deadly virus, then finally there's the US government, which finds out about the virus and then promptly starts murdering everyone within the designated quarantine zone. This film also maintains some of the darker elements of the Jurassic Park novel that the Jurassic Park movie went ahead and chucked. John Hammond is a pernicious, deceptively cutthroat capitalist in the book, which they basically watered down to a wide-eyed, well-intentioned grandpa for the film, whereas Carnosaur has this really pervasive anti-authoritarian vibe, which refuses to absolve anyone who had a hand in the creation of these creatures. I mean, the primary antagonist throughout the last act isn't even the dinosaurs or the scientists, it's the government. But then the hippies are also some of the first to go, so maybe I'm the goofball for trying to map some sort of political ideology onto it. But the way it depicts the government as much more eager to kill its complications rather than cure them is something that I can appreciate, which didn't cost the filmmakers 1 extra cent to write. Compare that to the ending of Jurassic Park 3, whomst I love, don't get me wrong, but that one ends with the Navy and the Marines sailing in to save the day. What, did Isla Sorna strike oil or something? If I had to sum up my overall impression, I'd say that Carnosaur went all out on a tiny budget, which is way more preferable to me than half-assing it with a big budget.
You don't really believe that.
Can we not?
If you thought effort was more important than financing, you'd have made more films by now.
Well, I made one. Another got scrapped. And the rest of my time I've been making YouTube videos.
Face it, you only make YouTube videos because it's infinitely safer than making art.
I could have told you that.
Look. Not everyone's cut out to be a filmmaker. It's a tough racket. Nothing wrong with being a lifelong critic.
I agree.
I'd hate to see you suffer. I mean it. You've tried so hard to become a filmmaker, putting in extra hours after your piece of shit day jobs for the past decade. I've seen you suffer through stress and fear and self-doubt, all so that you don't become some career critic. But I'm telling you, you're already a career critic. A very good one. The hard part's over. If you want it to be.
I already know all that.
Critiquing films might simply be a better option for you than coming up with your own stories.
Coming up with my own stories is how I critique films.
Not lately.
A Sound of Thunder is a 2005 adaptation of the Ray Bradbury short story of the same name. It tells the story of a futuristic safari company that takes rich assholes back in time to kill the same poor Allosaurus over and over again. But when one of their clients steps off the path and squashes a moth,
I don't believe it.
evolutionary history gets rewritten, and the heroes have to figure out how to undo their mistake before humanity gets wiped out by an ecological apocalypse. Having read the short story for the first time in 2005, I was super stoked to find out it was getting a big screen adaptation that same year. But then the trailers came out. A Sound of Thunder is one of those films where the production history is even more interesting than the film itself, where the quality is almost beside the point. Like, people love to trash this film, whereas I'm just like,
we're well past that!
So this movie looks terrible. I mean, that's not a secret, but it's not like the filmmakers wanted to make a film that looked this bad. A Sound of Thunder was directed by Peter Hyams, who knows how to make a good movie. He's directed 3 of my all-time favorite sci-fi action thrillers, Capricorn 1, 2010, The Year We Made Contact, and The Relic. A Sound of Thunder was greenlit with an $80 million budget, but was finished for just $30 million when Franchise Pictures suddenly went bankrupt right when it entered post-production. So all the CGI was added for basically as close to free as humanly possible. And it's clear from the blog posts that I've read from the visual effects artists on the Wayback Machine that it took a lot of hard work and talent just to get these visual effects up on the screen. The facial animation for the baboon lizard was animated in 3ds Max using a CG skin and a muscle rig to preserve proper volume preservation. We made a Max script that would convert the Maya animation into FK animation onto our bone structure that worked very well. We would then export the vertex motion data via point cache from each of these files, load them in another file containing a body mesh and a head mesh, which would then finally become the driving nodes for the final baboon lizard mesh. We finalized the simulation for the muscles and it was baked into our mesh using the point cache modifier. Yeah, I don't mess with animators anymore. Hey, you think maybe CGI is taking over Hollywood, not because it's faster or cheaper than other forms of visual effects, but because it's one of the only fields left in Hollywood that's largely non-union?
A good question. For another time.
Whatever. My point is that money doesn't buy talent in Hollywood so much as talent's time. Give the greatest VFX artists in the world less than half the time and money required to model, animate, and render out a venomous baboon lizard properly, and the end results will obviously look terrible, but it's not a reflection of the artist's talent. And besides, it's not like this film has nothing to offer.
Today, on this hunt, someone will die. The prey or the hunters. Imprint where indicated.
Film scholar Akira Lippert wrote in Electric Animal in 2000 that one of the ways in which we define modernity is the disappearance of wildlife from humanity's habitat. And not only that, the animals that disappear from humanity's habitat are often replaced by technologies that have a very strong association with modernity. Horses get replaced by cars, carrier pigeons get replaced by email, and police dogs are about to be replaced by military-grade flightless drones with uwu-based PR campaigns. But the disappearance of animals from our daily lives also presents something of a problem for humanity, because we've always defined humanity by comparing ourselves to animals. And so the disappearance of animals has a dehumanizing effect. Modernity is dehumanizing, I guess is what the scholarship is telling us. And I mean, who could argue nowadays? But where it gets, I don't know, kind of interesting is when these themes are expressed quite explicitly in A Sound of Thunder.
When I was a little boy, my grandfather used to tell me stories about actually seeing real animals in the wild. That's why I do this job. One day I'll be able to reconstruct the DNA from animals that lived long before the virus. I really think I can bring them back.
That's interesting. There's a tantalizing irony in Ed Burns accidentally bringing about an ecological apocalypse by trying to bring creatures back from extinction. If only they'd had the budget to realize the full vision.
But then progress is a rotten business, which is why you have to go out there and mingle with them. They pay, you study, I get rich. Is this a great country or what?
Early in the planning stages of this video, I knew I wanted to see just how far I could push this constructive criticism philosophy. What's the worst dinosaur film ever made? And are there any lessons that we can learn from it? Well, first we have to identify the worst of the worst. And for what it's worth, the internet had plenty of suggestions. There's bad on purpose parodies like the Velocipaster, low-budget mockbusters like 100 Million BC, and whatever the hell Super Mario Bros. Is. But one film kept coming up probably more than any other. Tammy and the T-Rex is an infamously schlocky comedy horror from 1994, in which Paul Walker's brain is transplanted into a robot dinosaur against his will by a mad scientist, and his bereaved girlfriend, played by Denise Richards, along with her patented sassy gay friend Byron, have to figure out how to put his brain back into his body while both the cops and the mad scientist close in on them. But I'm not going to talk about Tammy and the T-Rex too much in this video, for one simple reason. I love this movie.
And what do we tell our investors?
I showed them this and this, huh? I mean, they will love it. They are capitalists. They will see nothing but dollars, lots of dollars.
It knows exactly what it is, and it's not trying to deliberately waste anyone's time.
He's thinking, no, yes.
Too short.
But you can't have everything, honey.
Hurry up.
It's not like I never rolled my eyes. But the satire is funnier than I think most people give it credit for.
You see, the dinosaur has a new memory system. A new computer created by growing living crystals into memory cells. It's very new indeed. In fact, it is so new that, we are hoping that it'll put America back on top. All right.
No!
Anyway, Ultimately, this isn't a video about my love for Tammy and the T-Rex. I'll save that for an episode of Schlock and Awe. But now I need a new worst dinosaur film to take a look at. And wouldn't you know if the internet didn't have just the thing to suggest. In 1995, two mismatched cops are tasked with hunting down a sadistic serial killer. One is a hardened, cynical detective who's seen it all at this point, and the other is a fresh-faced, idealistic greenhorn eager to make his mark on the city. Together, they chase down leads, survive several brushes with death, bend the law whilst trying to enforce it, and eventually form a symbiotic partnership despite their differences in experience and life philosophies. Richard Roundtree plays their boss. In the end, they confront the killer, who pontificates at length about his biblically inspired plot to wipe the filth of mankind from the face of the earth, until finally the young greenhorn manages to stop the killer, retrieve the detonator, and blow up the missile before it plunges the earth into a new ice age. Sorry, wait, this is the wrong footage. This is from David Fincher's psychological crime thriller classic, Seven, whereas I've been talking this whole time about Theodore Rex.
Just tiptoe. And what does that smell? Is that you?
It's not me. How could it be me?
Did you?
Look, I didn't butt trumpet. One of these things is leaking.
Fine.
Do you like that joke? I still don't think it fits into the video super well, but there was no way I was cutting it. So Theodore Rex has one of the most infamous reputations of the whole genre. People hear it's bad before they even hear what it's about. Whoopi Goldberg disowned the film before it was even finished, and basically had to act her way through it under threat of legal action. It suffered from chronic financing issues that saw the whole crew get recycled all throughout the shoot.
Whatever you say, sir.
Good.
Is that Bud Cort? And most people say it's really too cringe to even be a good guilty pleasure. There's a fine line between camp and cringe, and Theodore Rex stands about 30 feet over that line. Or so they say. I'm gonna keep this brief, since the list of things that people hate about this movie is already well cataloged online. But the most surprising thing to me when I watched it wasn't that I hated it, but that it made me feel nothing. Like, I get what they were going for, with the world building and the texturing of the universe with a bunch of random crap, and some of it is camp, and some of it is cringe, and there is an actual plot here, one which slowly escalates from a single murder to a dastardly plan to destroy all mankind, but I sort of just found myself mindlessly nodding all the way through it.
You understand, don't you?
I'm getting a wee bit of breeze in my lowlands, lassie.
Without condoning
Can you just slide your butt?
or condemning.
Last chance. Who bought the butterfly?
I understand.
People talk about how the plot and the campy humor and the acting are all what makes this film bad. And I'm not going to argue with anyone's opinions, but I think the most fundamental problem is that it doesn't seem to feel anything about itself. I don't buy any of its emotions.
He's a dinosaur.
Come on, Coltrane. He graduated from the academy just like you did.
He's a dinosaur.
You're not a speciesist, are you?
Like, when it tries to integrate some semblance of social commentary into the film, I don't believe that anyone was actually trying to make a statement about prejudice and then decided to use wacky dinosaur hijinks in order to make the point. I think it was the other way around. I think they came up with a bunch of wacky dinosaur hijinks and then tried to sprinkle in the mere aesthetics of social commentary. This movie seems to know what social commentary, cheesy action, and omnicidal villains all look like, but I don't believe for even half a second that anyone actually felt the emotions that the characters feel throughout this script.
Why?
And that's a hell of a generalization to make. And for what it's worth, I'm not literally saying that no one in the production has ever felt any of these feelings. I'm just saying the proof is not in the movie.
Teddy, you were right.
Yes, sir.
We can all realize our dream.
So wing and a miss. Of course, no video about bad dinosaur films would be complete without taking a look at one of the many straight-to-video Mockbusters that's been released within the last decade. There's like a million of these. Take your pick.
You are no longer death row inmates. You are contestants on the greatest game show in the world, the Jurassic Game.
Studios like the Asylum and High Octane Pictures pump these things out at least a couple times a year at this point. In 2018, the Asylum released Triassic World, just 3 days before the release of Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. One look at the marketing materials and you figure it's obvious what makes it so bad. It's a shameless ripoff of Jurassic World, right?
Good. Stand down.
Well, you'd be surprised. It definitely shares the same premise. A greedy corporation genetically recreates some dinosaurs for less than ethical reasons, and then they get loose and start eating people. There's a straight-laced, no-nonsense lab manager who's constantly at odds with the more empathic dinosaur caretaker, who's constantly advocating for dinosaur rights.
These are complicated, living beings forced to endure invasive tests and conditions they did not ask for.
You're in charge out here, you gotta make a lot of tough decisions. It's probably easier to pretend these animals are just numbers on a spreadsheet. But they're not. They're alive.
But besides that basic setup, it seems to take great pains to try and distinguish itself. Someone tried to make this movie good. You know what these dinosaurs are? Gojirasaurus, which sounds totally made up.
An animal? What kind of animal?
Gojirasaurus, a dinosaur.
Hello? Are you aware of the penalty for making a prank?
But not only is that an actual dinosaur, it's actually from the Triassic period. Not even Jurassic Park gets that right. And while it's not like they had the budget to pull off any especially impressive set pieces, most every scene has at least one moment of, oh hey, that's pretty cool.
Let's get a move on.
And some of the supporting players are fun. I like the assistant. She's the only character in the film who didn't sign up for any of this. And her constant, I am so joining a union energy is one of the more relatable perspectives in the whole film.
You knew we were gonna die.
Why would I want that? I was following procedures.
Your procedures suck.
If I had to try and identify one mission-critical flaw with this film, it wouldn't be the overabundance of schlock, it'd be the overabundance of sincerity. It's trying to replicate the wonder and excitement of a $150 million film on the catering budget of a $150 million film, and the earnestness is a little cringe.
Time to grieve is later. Right now we get you a drink, get to safety.
Yeah, drink sounds good. Maybe a whiskey, huh?
Sure thing, buddy.
But you know what? I feel like there are much worse things in Hollywood than filmmakers trying to exceed the limitations of their budgets, and I defend the effort.
You're lying.
How can I be lying? It's my opinion.
You're being insincere.
How's that?
Didn't you write a script about dinosaurs running loose in a lab? Dinosaurs that were specifically bred for medical research by some greedy company?
That's totally different. My script isn't scientific gibberish. It's a Crichtonian application of real-world scientific research.
I think you're defending this film just because you know you might try something similar one day.
So what? What, my opinion can't be trusted because I can see what the filmmakers were going for?
None of these reviews are about the actual films. They're about you.
I could have told you that.
So what sort of videos are you going to make once you finally run out of things to say about yourself?
I want to talk about one more film today. One that's going to take us right up into the modern era. See, for all our talk about the limitations of small budgets, I really think most of these films' problems just boil down to basic scripting fundamentals. So at some point, I'd like to take a look at one of the most expensive dinosaur films ever made, as a sort of control to see what sort of problems might persist even when money is no object.
Do you remember the first time you saw a dinosaur? First time you see them, it's like a miracle.
Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom had a budget of about $170 million, and was made, quite frankly, by some of the best talent money can buy. J.A. Bayona is a fantastic director. His cinematographer and editor are some of the best in the business. Bryce Dallas Howard, Toby Jones, and Rafe Spall are some of the few living actors with famous parents whose talents I think actually managed to outshine their pedigrees. You didn't even know these two had famous parents, did ya? ILM is my personal favorite VFX house, and for what it's worth, I think the directing, acting, lensing, editing, scoring, and visual effects of Fallen Kingdom are all really pretty good. But I don't like the film.
Never thought I'd see one in real life.
I think it's fine, but like it's aggressively fine. It's like patently just okay, chronically forgettable. So why is that? Well, I for one think that there is a specific mission-critical flaw with this script. Whenever a problem arises in this film, it sort of just fixes itself. Oh no! How are they gonna... Oh, well, that takes care of that. Oh, but now they have an even bigger problem. How are they gonna get away from the T-Rex? Oh, well, never mind. Oh, but how's Owen gonna outrun the eruption? Oh, he's just not. Okay, I thought I was supposed to be worried. Must be one of those room temperature pyroclastic flows I've heard so much about. Time after time, this movie throws random complications at the characters only for them to fizzle out just as fast as they appeared. Someone will trip, or a ladder will fall, but the plan won't change. It's not a reversal, they just keep running, just keep climbing.
Just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, swimming, swimming.
The Stygimoloch shows up right when they need it most, and then it leaves when they don't anymore, and then it reappears again right when they need it one more time. Oh no! How are they gonna get away? And I'd argue that it's even worse on rewatch, because now we know these problems are just gonna fix themselves with absolutely zero effort. Not to say that there aren't any good reversals in this film. I mean, this is great stuff. But reversals like these should be in every scene, not just a couple. There's a word for this. Contrived. This script is contrived as hell. Some people are more fine with that than others, but it's a problem that doesn't not exist. Complications arise out of sheer happenstance and then resolve themselves just as quickly. Again, it's not like there aren't any tense scenes, and those are the ones that I'll remember, but I don't think there are enough to carry the whole film. Not for me anyway. And the rest of it is swimming in so much nostalgia bait that it almost makes me wish it hadn't even been a Jurassic Park film. Maybe that's the real takeaway, beyond any of my suggestions for the script. There should be more dinosaur films out there, big budget or not, that are not Jurassic Park sequels.
Big words for someone who's never made a dinosaur film themselves. Face it, you're all talk. Your directing ambitions are over. You might as well become a vlogger.
You know, you have been an absolute ass all day. But that's the first thing you've said that's just plain wrong.
What?
I have made a dinosaur film.
No, you haven't.
Yes, I have. Back in 2014, I wrote, shot, and edited the first episode of a planned 9-episode miniseries entitled The Fossil Fuelers. The first episode's up on my channel right now.
Well, I bet it sucks. I bet there's a reason you didn't finish.
There is a reason. But it's not the one you'd think. I got cold feet. Told myself nobody wanted to see it. Told myself it needed to be better. Needed to be good.
Well, for once I agree with you.
What is good? What have we been talking about for the last 40 minutes? Every film on this video has its merits. Every film on this video has its fans. And what's more, if somebody else made a video of their least favorite dinosaur films, I bet a lot of my favorites would be on it. Valley of Gwangi looks like a dated bore to a lot of people. Jurassic Park 3 has the lowest IMDb rating of any Jurassic Park sequel. The Land Unknown is regularly ranked one of the worst dinosaur films of all time, and Tammy and the T-Rex is considered one of the worst films of any kind.
I take it back. Maybe you're not even a good critic.
I know you think you're helping, being hypercritical like this. I know you think it's going to help me make better art, but just face the facts. The Fossil Fuelers has been on ice for 7 years now. All because you convinced me. All because I convinced me. That not existing was a better fate for the project than existing in some less than perfect form. But I don't think that's true. And I think that means you've outlived your usefulness. Is it good? Well, say I have no idea. All I know is that I like it. And if that's not good enough, what the hell is? What now? Well, I can't predict the future. But the last time I felt like this, I went and made a movie. This is how we do it in the effects business. I've been trying to rig it so that it will fall when I tap the bookshelf, and it hasn't been working, so we're just going to do this.
And already cramping.
What now? Is there a kitty back there?